Peter Jumrukovski is the host of I Love Success podcast. He's done over 220 episodes, and he has had many big names on his podcast. Dave Asprey, Bill Dorfman, Tom Bilyeu, Joe Vitale, Evan Carmichael, Brendan Kane, Bedros Keuilian, AJ Harbinger, right? So I want to go right into why you started I Love Success in the first place. So the sort of the startup idea of why you want to even do podcasts in the first place.
Yeah, so I am a martial artist and I've had so much incredible teachers. I think my best teacher have always been my father. He's been my sensei over all the years, but got to meet so many teachers during the way and learned a little from many, which made me excel in my art and also as an athlete and a sport. And when I was done with that, I wanted to create something that could give back to others, not just martial artists. And the first step was writing a book, starting lecturing about that, and going out and speak with people. But I realized very, very quickly that my knowledge was limited and I wanted to learn more and share that. And my first interest for podcasting, I have had to thank Brian Rose from London Real. I used to listen to his shows. I still do to this day. And I really loved, these conversations that you could sit with somebody and ask them anything and just kind of dig real deep.
So before you move forward, who are your favorite podcasters out of curiosity?
Brian Rose is
Yeah.
my favorite podcaster. Yes.
He's the guru. He's the go-to guy.
I love his conversations that are he is very good at asking questions, and also I've kind of tried to go deep just like he does, and seeing it more as conversations, just like we're doing today. It's not an interview. We're sharing knowledge. We're learning from each other as human beings. And that's what I'm aiming for. And I really enjoyed, when I was in the gym, when I was running, I could hear these people with all these stories. And I wanted to have the front row seat and share it. And that's why I started a podcast.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So let's actually go into Brian as sort of your role model for
Yeah.
example. If you can go into a little bit deeper, what about Brian and his style that have you go, that resonates with me. Let me do a little bit more of that.
First of all, he was very open with who he was and how much he struggled in his own life. And by sharing that, he got the guests to open up about themselves. So I really enjoy that because I've always been pretty private and I've been fearful of sharing my weaknesses because I'm a martial artist. I'm a competitor. I'm supposed to be strong and I don't have any weaknesses, right? That's the idea. That is not good to hold that shit in yourself. So I kind of learned that it's good to open up. And when you open up, other people open up. And a lot of times we relate more to people that could, share their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I really enjoy that.
So for me, myself came from a very technical background,
Yeah.
and in the world of academia, it's very similar. It's super competitive.
Yeah.
Basically, is we're supposed to know the answer. We're supposed to be world experts, and if you
Yeah.
say I don't know, then it's a sign of weakness. At least that's the way I interpreted it. But throughout my journey of starting my podcast, really surrounding myself with people who own who they are, the perfectly imperfect human being that they are, that was super. That in the past wasn't inspiring for me, but the more I do this, the more I realize, like, holy shit, like it requires courage and willingness and balls to actually just own everything. So case in point, I was listening to Joe Polish of I Love Marketing,
Yeah.
and he was speaking, and he just say straight out, right? I'm an addict. I was sexually molested. I have low self-esteem, and I'm doing everything that I can to to go into the straight path, and in simple sentences, but the most private part of a human being, right, the most
Yeah.
private part of humanity, he just like, boom, let me lay that out there. And
Yeah.
I, even speaking it right now, like, gives me chills. Like, that requires so much courage. That's
Yeah.
super beautiful.
Yeah. I love when I meet people like that that can completely own themselves, because what I've learned, and I'm curious to see what you've learned too, is that we're all these amazing people we get to meet, just like ourselves. They're all going through shit. A lot of times we try to walk around in this world like we have our shit together, but nobody really has. It's a constant battle and a constant journey, and I think that's what makes us human.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm kind of jumping around a bit
Yeah,
because I know people want to get into the tactical, like the
yeah, of course.
gears and all that stuff. So we'll get to the gears, guys. So we'll get into the strategies. We'll get into all those things. But
Yeah,
I'm curious to know, you've done 220 episodes. So you started how long ago?
uh, probably 4 years ago or
Four
so.
years ago. Perfect, beautiful. So essentially double my time, right?
Yeah.
So can you share with us a little bit of the internal journey from episode 1 to now episode 220? What have you learned about, being more of who you are as a human being from episode 1 to episode 220?
I mean, you learn so much. That's why I love podcasting and meeting people and get to ask them anything. When I was a kid, I used to love Highlander, and I don't know if you guys know Highlander, but usually when he cut the head of somebody, he got all their knowledge. And I kind of feel the same way. For every guest that I've met, there's been something that has been downloaded into my mind and body. I don't remember it all, but I just know that I walk the planet much stronger, much more confident, and I have a lot of tools that I didn't have before. I can deal with conversations in a way. I'm not nervous of asking the tough questions. I can listen.
Can you give us an example of what a tough question is?
A tough question could be, what is the worst day of your life and how did it change you? It could be somebody said, my father was an alcoholic. How did that really affect you? Do you love your father? Like, questions that we don't ask, but once you ask, people want to answer if it's a safe environment. I think that the biggest reason why people don't ask question, not answer questions, is because they don't feel safe. They feel that
Mm-hmm.
someone is going to judge them,
Mm-hmm.
because we judge ourselves all the time. But when we can come into a safe haven and actually listen and be okay with all the answers, then it's quite interesting to explore.
Yeah. Uh, One of the things I really appreciate is podcasting. I mean, I hate to say it this way because it kind of insults it, but it's almost like therapy in public,
Yeah.
right? And the gift that we as hosts give our guests is the gift of listening, because most people walk around don't have anyone to talk to in the most authentic, most deep way, and we actually give them our full attention, allow them to say anything, the sacred space to say
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. It's so interesting, and it's hard to do that because we probably going to talk how to get guests and high profile guests. But I'm what I've realized, when you have high profile guests, they are, most of them are on a script because they've done this 300 times, and you have to break them out of that script to become real and authentic. That's why I sometimes enjoy having conversations with people that haven't done many podcasts, because you can be more raw and it's not scripted. So that's probably something we're going to talk about later. But getting into those layers is, you know, a skill that we learn with talking to more people.
So let's actually talk about that, since this is a conversation about podcasting, about
Yeah.
the craft. In my mind, the way I see it, like anything that I do, I treat it as a craft. I'm serious
Yeah.
about it, so I'm a student of it. I look at people who does it really well.
Yeah.
very very natural. The Howard Sterns, the James
Yeah.
Altuchers, right? The Joe Rogans, like, oh
Yeah.
my God, they're so good at it, right?
Yes.
So what is like a tactic that you use that you've honed over time to provide that psychological safe space for your guests?
Yeah, first of all, they have to respect you. So somehow you have to convey who you are to them and why they should be talking to you. And that how you do that, that could be different cues. I usually tell them a story about something that has happened in my life or something that I have accomplished. If I say that I'm a world medalist, all of a sudden, okay, they realize this is a disciplined guy. If I say that I'm a father, for example, oh, he knows about kids.
You are a
So
father?
not yet,
Oh,
but
okay. I was gonna say I had no idea you're a father. What?
not that I know of, but hopefully soon. So,
Good.
I mean, all those things that you say uh, is going to open up people. And other than that, you have to be prepared. I've done the mistake sometimes that I don't prepare for a show. And what happens when I'm not prepared, even if this has never happened to me, but I was on another show and they didn't even know my name, for example. So I didn't feel respected. I felt like, okay, they just maybe just want to do another show for the next week. And I think that's so important that you make it all about the person that are there. I always tell them I'm here to honor your journey, your story. This is important to me because my mission is to help at least 10 million people to achieve their dreams. So I wanted them to understand that what they're saying is so important, even if they're not famous, quote unquote, even if they're not a Tom Bilyeu or a Dave Asprey. I don't care. You are a human being. I want to talk to you. I want to learn from you. And I need to tell them that so they feel like this person is really interested in who I am and my story.
Yeah. The way I see it, preparation for sure. I do a
Yeah.
lot of preparation. The lyric kings of the world, they say, "Oh, I just wanted to be fresh and look at it from a listener's point of view."
Yeah.
That worked for Larry King, and all respect for Larry King. But for me, I'm the kind of person that needed the research because
Yeah.
I wanted to ask new questions. I don't want to just have them go through their spiel that they've told,
Yeah.
as you said, 300 times, like any other podcast. I want to actually come at it from a different angle and self-servingly, so I can actually learn something newly
Yeah.
about them, right?
Yeah.
But also at the same time for them as well. Part of my intention with every guest that I have, I don't always succeed. Part of my intention is that they actually discover something new about their wisdom, about their story, about their mental models. They're like, oh, I didn't know, this about myself, and so forth.
I love that. I'm going to write that down right here. That's something that I want to think more about. You see, this is awesome. You can learn and grow as human beings just by listening. And I totally agree with you. And I think having a conversation, it's almost like a roller coaster. You have to take the guest on a ride and be in control, but let them think that they are in control. So when you ask a person a question, and people that are doing this might be a little bit more advanced, but for people who have done 50, 100 interviews or are great at conversations, you want to ask them questions, but the guests are going to give you clues. For example, I had uh, Craig Ballantyne, the world's most disciplined man, and during his show, he gave me a cue that his father was an alcoholic, but I didn't pick up on that. He wanted to talk about that subject because it was important to him. We were in a safe space. I had done a great job, but now I just moved on to my next question. And that's the problem when you're too prepared and you can't listen enough, which I made a mistake. I listened to the show. I was like, why didn't I ask that? Because he wanted to tell me, but he wanted me to ask him about it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I'll share this one tidbit with you,
Yeah.
and which you may not find it interesting. So I actually listen to my own shows, and I am my number one fan of my own show,
Yeah.
right? And I'm saying it not from an egotistical CK is awesome, but when I listen to it again and then again, now I can look at it from a new perspective, a new point of view. So to receive it as an audience rather than being the role of a host. So I can look at it from a mechanistically point of view, but as well
Yeah.
as a student's point of view.
I like that. How are you? Do you like your own voice? Because I had a big problem with that in the beginning, and I know everybody that's watching this now, they're going, I hate my own voice. I hate my own voice. I just want to tell you now, after so many shows, I start to like my voice.
Yeah.
I used to hate. I'm curious where you are in that journey.
Sure. So I started record myself back in 2008. And if
Wow.
I look back in the first few videos, it was like 20 takes for the same video, 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right? Uh, and in the beginning, it was exactly the same reaction because the way we hear our voice is through bone conduction. So it's very different than how it's recorded. So what I'll say to the younger CK or whoever who is starting their journey, in the beginning, you're not gonna like your voice, which is totally okay, totally natural. But at some point, it will click for you. Well, one, you'll get better gear, so you actually sound better, right?
Yeah.
And two, you'll learn to know that it's actually, to me, speaking to the younger CK, less about the content is more about the energetic transmission to whoever's listening. Because if you can receive what they're sharing to you, the best stories and the wisdom and the nuggets that they got
Yeah.
as currency of love, then it's less about the quality of the voice or little things like that. Don't get me wrong, all those things matter,
Yeah.
but more importantly is the energetic transmission. What do you say to that?
I agree with you. I think that's the key. I never thought about it in that way, but I think that's it. It's how much you are feeling for this subject. You can feel that, and guests can feel that too. When people are listening or watching um, your show, that they're gonna feel right away if you're in it or you're somewhere else.
Mm. So again, we're gonna get into really detailed nuance here because we're talking to aspiring podcasters or seasoned podcasters. We're gonna get into the mechanics of it.
Yep.
How do you maintain focus? Because we as human beings, you're a world-class martial artist, as you know, it's really difficult to basically do two things at the same time. On the one hand, you're the producer. On the other, you're the show host. You're the listener. So you need to, how do you maintain that focus, that pristine listening for your guest?
Yeah, I mean it's hard, and especially I had when I started my show, I promised myself everything is gonna be in person, two people in a room, four eyes sharing. Uh, then March happened, and I didn't know what to do. Should I quit podcasting for a while to wait, or should I go on a world tour to meet with awesome people that could never come to my studio? And I made a later decision, and it's been great for me. I've been able to grow my audience. I've been able to meet right virtually with people from all over the world that I couldn't have in my show unless they were here on a tour or a book launch or something. So it's opened a lot of doors. Although when we talk about listening, I don't think it can't be as deep.
Mm,
All these virtual things, they're great, but it can't be as deep because when we're in the same room, we're sharing a different energy. There's I think something happened when two human beings are together in a room. I can't explain the physical part of it, but there's some type of attraction between human beings. It doesn't have to be sexual, but it's some type of attraction. You're sharing something, and that creates a different vibe.
yeah, for sure. Chinese culture, just a little tidbit.
Yeah.
Chinese culture, our currency of love is food.
Yeah.
So they do everything, any kind of business or personal transactions of any sort through food.
Yeah.
And then there's something magical where they say, even in the Western culture, right, you break bread and
Yeah.
then guess what? Your guard's down, and you can actually be a little bit more human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
So let's actually go right into the things I know most people care about, especially
yeah.
new podcasters. They want to get into gears, they want to get into the process.
Yeah.
No problem. Let's go there. So 220 episodes.
Yeah.
What's the evolution of the gears that you've have had? And knowing what you know now, what would you say to someone who's starting?
I would
What are the
say,
gears?
yeah, I mean, I would say someone who's starting, don't you don't have to worry about the gear right now. I have a friend who started a company called Callcast where you can record through your phone, and that's perfectly enough to get started. I know I was reading all this article about gears and all, and I got so confused. Uh, so it just delayed the process. It makes it more difficult. If you need to fucking record from your phone, do that. Uh, as far as gear, I have Rode mics. That's what I've had for almost all my episodes. In the beginning, I borrowed someone else's microphone. Now I bought my own. Uh, it it really doesn't matter. Quality is worse now because we're doing it virtual and not everybody has a microphone on the other side that is high quality. I've No one has told me that is going to be that is not good. I hired a professional videographer for all of my shows the last year. Now I've done them recording like we are recording now. Nobody has said a single thing about that. So it was all in my head. Obviously, better quality is nice, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter in beginning. Look at Tim Ferriss. He's still sitting in his living room. He doesn't give a shit, and he's one of the biggest podcasters. So you can. It really doesn't matter as long as you have great content and that the audio is so bad that you can't hear it. And that's not going to happen because if you have a decent mic, it's going to be more than what you need.
Yeah. Here, so I thought about it before I
Yeah.
asked you that question. Here's what I say to any new podcasters out there. The temptation is to focus all your energy on gears, and namely because it would just delay the inevitable
Yeah.
to record, right? So but at the same time, I also want to be cognizant, have a little bit of compassion
Yeah.
for the new podcaster here. So get whatever gear that's good enough,
Yeah.
because you gear like anything gear wise, AV wise, it's a whole rabbit hole of, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on gear if
Yeah.
that's all you focus on. At the same time, if you just get good enough Rode microphone, or even your phone with the different services, you can just actually get started. The only way for you to get better as a podcaster is to podcast. The only way for you to be better as a martial artist is get on the mat. The only way for you to be a better writer is to write. So
Yeah.
don't delay any further. Get good enough tools. You can always upgrade
Yeah.
afterwards. Yeah.
I agree with you. It's the craft. I remember as a martial artist, I've seen guys from Russia in the dirtiest karate gi, but they were kicking ass. And then I've seen people in the newest gis and they can't do a technique. It's nice to have nice things. I love nice things, but at the end of the day, the craft is the conversations, and that's what you need to focus on.
So on that art of
Yeah.
holding good conversations, again, knowing what you know now,
Yeah.
220 episodes later, what would you say is like the 80-20 principle, right? What would be the basic things of conversations for
Yeah.
them to say, hey, just focus on these basic techniques or
Yeah.
skills of having conversations, and versus focusing on the fancy techniques of conversations, so on and so on.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, be human and be who you are. That's when you're going to connect with people. And that's very intangible. It's hard to
Yeah, can you break it down and make it a little bit
yeah.
more concrete so people can?
So let me break it down a little bit. And first of thing is you have two ears and one mouth. So it's a very simple. Try to, listen as much more than you talk. Also, try to, when you ask questions, try to be prepared what you're going to ask. uh, because I see it all the time. New podcast, or you're reading the paper and it breaks the flow. And as someone that's going to share their story, they don't want to be interviewed in a way like they're on a job interview. They want to have a conversation. So have it somewhere where you can see it. And even, I see it all the time when it comes to the intro. If you're going to have it on the screen, if it's a Zoom call, have it right in front of you, because it's so distracting for the guests when you're like looking to the side and reading something about that person. I I find it, if I were the guest, is like, oh, hey, this is Peter what was your last name again? Jumrukovski, and he has done karate. He does real estate. I'm like, okay, why are we even doing this? So listen more, be prepared, and know what questions you're going to ask until you are on that level. Right now, I never write down questions.
No questions. You didn't.
I just go raw right now. But
Wow.
the first 100 episodes, I wrote down questions.
Mm.
Now I know what I'm going to ask.
Oh, so you kind of have an arc that
I know exactly what I'm going to ask because I prepared and studied. And also, it's almost like you're a chess player, right? Now I know if my opponent, it's not my opponent, but if my the other person is making that move, I know where to go in the conversation because I've done it so many times. But until you do that, prepare. Let's say I'm going to ask you a question. What was the worst day of your life and how did it change you? And I've already read your book and you were molested as a child. So most likely you're going to talk about that. Maybe in my mind, I'm prepared. What if I know that it was your father's friend and your father didn't do anything about it, for example? I already know that. So depending on your answer, I might have 2 or 3 options. What's the follow-up question? Instead of being like, oh, whoa, we're talking about a very sensitive subject and I'm being awkward, and that's going to make you even more, tense.
So actually, on that note, I'm very curious. As compassionate and empathetic human beings that we are, some subjects are sensitive, right? So how do you ask those questions without being blunt, and at the same time maintain your not being like so into the, like pity or compassion or something like that, like drawn into the whole emotional impact of it?
I think it's a fine art and you have to feel it out with every person. Obviously, I don't want to mention it. I want them to mention it. So if somebody was sexually abused or something very sensitive, I don't want to mention it. I want to ask good questions. So usually when I've had someone who had their father kill their mother. And that was one of my guests. And that was the conversation we were about to have. And it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had in my life. So how do I have that and show respect for this person? She's going to talk about her life. I usually start with, tell me about you as a kid. What did you dream of? Something positive. Get them into a good mode. We're talking about that. And then I ask, okay, what happened when you were young and something like that. And they will likely lean into that. And then you give them cues. So I would say warm up the conversation and then ask them questions that make them open up.
Yeah.
And that's very tricky because they might not say it. And then you have to make the decision, am I going to be insensitive right now and ask something that is very hard and see how they react. Sometimes I say this line, which is very good. I say, CK, I want to go deep. Let's talk heart to heart. I've learned more about you. I know this has happened to you. If you're comfortable, would you mind sharing your deepest thoughts, because I think my audience could really benefit from hearing your story. And ask for permission.
Yeah, I like that. So the way I do it, I'll share
Yeah.
this with you.
Yeah, I would love to know.
The way I do it is, I'll share with them the purpose of the podcast,
Yep.
from the pre-podcast conversation to right before we start recording. I tell them, hey, this is entrepreneurs having a conversations about their hero's journey. We're going to talk about the highlights, but more importantly, we want to talk about the lowlights as well. So that way,
Yeah.
the younger Peter or CK or listening and who's grappling with their darkness can actually see some light, right? Get
Yeah.
some tactical things. So just, so that way they know in their mind that's the direction that we will go at some point.
I like that. And I think if you set that up in the beginning, they know that we're going to talk about it. And I do that sometimes too. I think that's great. I also think one thing that is great is when you listen to somebody who's talking about a subject, that you try to look them in the eye, maybe smile a little bit, nod. Those small little cues, because I know in the beginning I was so focused on my what's the next question that I forgot to listen. And I think that's also something that maybe we should talk about, how new guests.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a bit, because I'm a serious guy. I don't know if you got a
Yeah.
sense of me already. So 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 my listening phase is very serious,
Yeah.
because I'm listening intently to what you have to say.
Yeah.
And I always forget to smile, and people would tell me afterwards, like, man, that was so serious.
Yeah.
You're like a totally different person when you're doing podcasts. So
Yeah.
what are some of the ways for you, Peter, curious to know, for you to maintain that lightness, that playfulness?
Yeah, I think I have the same tendency, and I sometimes I can look aggressive, which I'm not meaning to look aggressive. I'm just focused. So I'm working on that as well. And what's my goal? My goal is for my guests to share, and what can I do to help that guest? If it's a smile, I have to remind myself that, oh, hey, loosen up, Peter. They don't want to see your angry face. They want to see you smile. So it's a constant reminder. And even if some people are too, like, I know this, that some people are too awkward when we're talking about tough things. And if you're out there starting a new show and you get awkward when you talk about tough things, look at your face, watch recordings, because if you have a very awkward looking or goofy looking smile when somebody's talking about serious shit, maybe you should look a little bit more serious in that moment. So play around with it and see what the reactions is from the guests.
One thing I haven't done, but I've been told to do, is have a post-it with the word smile right by the camera. So that way there's a physical reminder there, because otherwise I'm just like,
I think that's great. You have a great smile too. So,
oh, thank you. When I use it, when I use it.
Yeah, don't be, don't be, what's the word? Don't be cheap with your smile. It's free,
I love it.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about because you started it as a way more even kind of like a spiritual intention, right? A higher intent. I want to help 10 million people to become successful, and I think that's a very admirable goal. Has that intention shifted from episode 1 to episode 220?
I mean, I thought this would be much easier than it was, and that would be super easy to get a lot of listeners, doing a lot of impact. So I've realized during the way that I need to do more, to give more, because there's so much great content out there, and there's so you have to really do this because it's important to you, and realize that I had this revelation. Malik, who has been my advisor since day one, I think I did a YouTube video or whatever, and it was like 30 views or something like that. And it made me so upset. Like I put all my energy into this and 30 people watched it. And he told me like, yeah, maybe that feels like a little, but just imagine you speaking in a room with 30 people
Mm,
actually listening to you for full 10 minutes
mm,
and maybe learning something. So I
mm,
try to go back to that all the time and say, hey, every person counts.
mm,
Uh, that's why I'm doing it one by one. Don't focus so much on how many people, how many likes, how many subscribers. Focus on the craft, and the rest will follow.
yeah. Well, I mean, I want to congratulate you because I did a little bit of research before I hop on.
Yeah,
I'm looking at your YouTube. You know, you have close to 1,000 subscribers, right? Your videos are getting tens of thousands of views. So that's a huge stadium, really, listening to the conversation that you have with your guests.
thank you. I appreciate that. The thing is, in my mind, I feel like my confidence, feel like the conversations I have, I feel like they deserve much more people watching them. So, and I feel like a lot of people might feel that way, and we have to realize, okay, where's the gap? I'm not where I want to be, uh, so maybe there's a gap in my marketing, right? I feel like I have great conversations. Right now, I've hired a YouTube coach, so I'm gonna become better at that. I need to become better at my marketing. I need to become better at booking even bigger guests, have them promote me. There's so many steps that you as a podcaster would learn, but at the end of the day, I love this conversation. So even if nobody's watching it, I've still learned something.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point. I want to underline this. I want to
Yeah,
say this to you, but as who's watching this, Global Warrior is my second podcast. My first podcast was Entrepreneurs on Purpose, and treated it as a sprint. And I did 8 episodes, but I did not get the external validation that I was looking for, the metrics. So then I quit. I stopped.
yeah,
And what I realized, having rekindle my love for conversations, is this. Well, one, here's the mental model that I would share with my younger self, is that, hey, if you have all the money in the world, would you still be doing this?
yeah,
Yes. Okay. And then also, if you reach even one person that they would that you would alleviate their suffering, would you? Is it worth it? Yes. So if I treat, and also, do you enjoy the conversations that you have with your guest? Yes. So if all of those are already there, the external validations, the views, the audience, or whatever opportunities that may lead down the way, those are just brownie points. That's the way I'm treating this right now. This is a marathon. This is a craft. This is
yeah.
something that I'm dedicated to. This is something that I enjoy. This is something that I find fulfillment in. So I'm gonna keep doing this.
Yeah, that I think that's the key. I've done a couple of Q&As with new podcasters, and a lot of times when you're new, like you think about, okay, how can I monetize this? How can I make this big? I think all of those things are great, and you should have a big vision and a big dream, but at the end of the day, you have to enjoy conversations, and you have to enjoy booking a guest every week or every other week, preparing for the podcast, find an editor or do it yourself, market it, and do this year after year. And then it's inevitable that you're going to be successful. You just have to have the patience.
Yeah. So let's actually talk a little bit about the workflow a bit,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. So
Yeah.
to break it down for us, from booking the guest to, actually, you know what? Before you even book the guest,
Yeah.
what kind of guest do you book? Like, what's your selection criteria for you to say, I want to, reach out and make the effort to even have this person on my show?
Yeah. So for me, I want to have somebody that has a story that is important for them. So it could be anyone from an athlete to somebody who has survived trauma to a martial artist to a homeless person, somebody who have learned something in life that they are willing to share. So that's a very broad criteria, which is great for me, because I can talk to so many people and I can learn from so many amazing people. And so that's basically my criteria. And then I try to vary that with people who have like a massive following, because it looks good when you made the intro today and told I had all these guests on my podcast, that it makes me look good, right? It's like I'm at a party with all the hot girls in a way. uh, and that's awesome, especially when you want to book other guests. uh, but at the end of the day, I'm passionate about the conversations. And why is it fun to talk to Tom Bilyeu, for example? Because he has so much knowledge. He has done so much in his life, not because he has a million followers. That's just a bonus. The reason why he has that is because he provided massive value. Or if you post sexy pictures. So, but he has provided massive value, right? So for me to talk to him, it's an amazing experience. So to make it short, my criteria is very broad. And I talk to the people that I want to talk to. I might read a book. Like the other week, my father sent me a book, one of the most successful wrestlers in the world. I read his book and I was like, shit, I want to talk to him. I got him on my show 1 week later. I could never have done that before. So how lucky am I? I can read a book, reach out to the person, and most likely I'm going to hear back at least a no or a maybe. And in the best of worlds, I can talk to that person, ask them anything. So I get to learn. Like a book is a lifetime of knowledge, right? And I get to dig even deeper. So that's what I do. I go on what's important to me and my guests.
Yeah. So let's actually talk about, I mean, before I'm kind of segue, open a lot of loops. The power of having a podcast.
Yeah.
So I would say back in the 90s, if you have a blog, people want to talk to you, right? And then it's, I don't know, Twitter followers and Instagram followers and so forth. Today it's podcast.
Yeah.
When people hear that I have a podcast, that's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
And then if they're savvy, they'll say how many episodes, and I tell them 100. Oh, okay, so this guy's serious. This is not just some 8 episode fly by night, inspiration type things. So how have people responded to you, even just in social settings whenever you mention you have a podcast? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, oh wow, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then, as you said, oh, how many people are listening? That's the second question. And then, it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been really good. People are positive. They ask me what I've learned, and I get to tell them that I meet all these amazing people. So if you're looking for social validation, it's a great way.
Yeah. And I think the point you mentioned earlier about the big names, to me, I'm like you, right? My personal criteria is, am I curious about this person?
Yeah.
Because at some point during 100 episodes, my thought was, let me talk to the big names with the big followers as a way to leverage their influence, right? To lift my downloads per se. But I wasn't so intrigued about the person per se. I'm not proud to say this, by the way, but that's one key things that I learned.
Yeah.
Is,
me too.
Yeah. If I'm truly curious about this person, then it would be great for the guest as well. And then it would be great for the listeners. But if I'm just like, kind of interested in the person, then it doesn't make it compelling content to listen to. What do you say to that?
I totally agree with you. And I thought that, like, oh, if I have this guest, they'll share it on their Instagram and I'll get millions of downloads. I've had people with more than 1 million followers share the podcast on their Instagram. It does not equate to downloads. You have to build your own audience. You have to be the people have to be passionate about you to come back. who are you as the host? So that's why we're going back to why Brian Rose, I think, has been so successful, is because I come back because of him. Even if, like, the guest, I don't even care that much who the guest is, because I know it's going to be a great conversation. And I think that's where you want to come as a host, that people, even if you take someone off the street today that you're curious about, people come back because they know that you're going to facilitate these amazing conversations.
Yeah, it really is a journey. It's an auditory journey.
Yeah.
You're taking them through an auditory movie almost, right? You're giving them a window into someone's life and their mind. So our
Yeah.
ability to navigate inside their mind and actually pull out things that's inspiring, that's emotional, that's insightful, that's helpful and valuable to those who are listening.
Yeah.
It really is a craft. It really is a craft.
It is. And you get so close to your audience. I remember one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. I don't remember who the guy was. And I just know he was at Bondi Beach in Australia, and he was running and recording his podcast, telling me what he saw and how his life was. And that was so exciting to me. And I was like, wow. And I was in my gym, cold in Sweden. He was on Bondi Beach and all those things, because he told me what I wanted to hear. He was experiencing the world, which I wanted to do. So I think as a host, it's so important that you take your guests on that emotional roller coaster, almost like a good movie, like what's going to happen next, or, ooh, he asked that question. I really want, when the listener is thinking, can't he ask that question, and you ask it, then you know there's a bond, and you have a fan or a listener for life.
Yeah, I mean the craft of being ballsy enough to ask the hard question. Someone that I actually look up to, who asks hard questions. I don't know if you know this podcaster. His name is Andrew Warner of Mixergy.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So anyway, he has an entrepreneur show, and he will ask entrepreneurs point blank questions. What's your revenue? Like,
Yeah.
everyone
Well,
wants to know, but no
yeah.
one is courageous enough to ask. It's just like, what's your revenue? What's your
Yeah.
numbers? And why did you do this? And how was the relationship with your wife? Like,
Yeah.
did that bankruptcy? Like, he just like go after it.
Oh,
So
I
that's
love that.
that's amazing. All
Yeah.
right, so let's go into the workflow, the creative process. So you identify a guest that you wanted to book. This guy intrigues you, and a big name and all these beautiful things. And then what? What do you do?
I mean, there's many different ways to get a guest. I mean, when I didn't, now it's a little bit easier for me because I have a track record. It's like I'm at that party with all the hot chicks, which makes things easier. But in the beginning, I tried to find out, how can I make this exciting for this guest? So, for example, I'm interested in fighting. I had a friend who knew UFC fighters. I asked for an introduction. It's a warm lead, so to speak. They have. I know Marcus. Marcus knows Pedro. Okay, Marcus tells Pedro this is a good guy. If you can do that, that's the best. I used to go to event. I mean, one of my first, I think, 10 or 12 episodes was with episode 12 was Lyoto Machida, for example. So I had a friend who knew Lyoto Machida. We went to train together. I gave him my book. I went to his seminar. And so he had seen me 3 or 4 or 5 times. He saw that I was serious about karate. And then I asked him, hey, this is what I do, or would you be open? And he said yes. I think one thing that has stopped me in the past, before doing the podcast, is that I have been afraid of asking. And I said with the podcast, I'm going to ask, and I'm not going to answer for the guests. Ask and see what they say. And most people want to help. They see that you're passionate. Just like, for example, you had a show today with Chris Voss, right? Which is a big name guest that I'm actually have been trying to get on my show for a long time. So I'm a little bit jealous. And that's awesome. So I would be curious to see how you got him on the show, but then you can just email, but make it personal. Sometimes I've sent out 10 emails and I forgot to change the name. And the I think there was the assistant responded, his name is not that. That was so bad of you. And I felt so bad. So please don't template too much. Be more personable, because it's not going to work and it's going to make you look bad. So find ways. Tom Bilyeu, I emailed him and his assistant for 2 or 3 years before getting him on the show. I just took different angles. It's episode 200, episode 150. I'm doing this. I'm passionate about this, until they finally had another show cancel, and I had that moment to get in, and I was now friends with the booker because I've been talking to him for 2 or 3 years, and he's like, "This guy's crazy. We just gotta arrange it."
It's persistent.
Yeah.
It's persistent. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tom as well. So, I'm jealous of you having Tom. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
how did you get Chris Voss on the show?
Yeah, I'll share this with you. Yeah. So the way I've done it is I'm in a few men's group, entrepreneur group, and Chris was one of the guest speakers / guest participants.
Yeah.
We happened to be in the same small group, and I just mentioned it in passing, and this is what my show is about, blah blah blah. And then he liked me enough to say, yeah, I'd love to do your show. So we actually bypassed the gatekeeper altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that to be in those environments and to be around networking and helping, that's how we met, right? Through Jared. So shout out to him. We met at the networking event, and I was curious about you, and then I invited you to my show, and we've stayed in touch that way.
Mm-hmm. So to me, that's the best, and then that's essentially my pipeline, so to speak, right? I met someone, I like them, I like their vibe, I like their energy, I like their message.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious about the person, then I'll invite them to be on the show per se. I haven't done the outreach method yet.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you do quite a bit of outreach. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do it. Yeah. For example, Dave Asprey. How did I get Dave Asprey to episode 200? I go to Bulletproof probably 2 or 3 times a week. And for the past year, I've sent him a picture or a video on Instagram every time I've been there. Like, hey, Dave, I'm here again. I would love to have you on the show. Plus, I've emailed him. I've done. And after a while, like, who is this guy? Like, I need to talk to him. So you can get in touch with anyone if you just do it in a fun way. I was friendly, persistent, right?
Yeah, I like
he
that.
loves his company, and I'm there like, hey, hope you're having a great day. I'm drinking your coffee. I just worked out. When are we doing the show? And then just bye. So just be friendly and cool.
I like that. I'm gonna start doing that.
Yeah.
That's actually very creative. I mean, you could say no to a personalized video, especially maybe I'm busy, right? Legitimately busy, but after 2, 3, 5, 10 videos, you're like, I kind of feel bad. I don't make time. I mean, just make a little time for this person.
Yeah. And I met, speaking of Bulletproof, I met Frank Grillo there one morning drinking coffee, and he looked so tired. I was like, hey, I don't want to bother you, man, but I really want you on my show. This is what I do. He's like, sure. Send me a text or send me a post on Instagram. So I did that. He replied and said, yeah, I'm going to put you in touch with my assistant, which he hasn't done yet. And it's been like 6 months, but I'm still nudging him. And I know I will meet him again one day at Bulletproof, and he will feel bad and say, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, being nice, being persistent. I think that's a good way to summarize it. Yeah. So you have had 220 guests minimally, right?
Yeah.
For those people listening who want to start a podcast, but who also may want to share their message, right? Who wants to be a good guest. So let's jam a little bit about what makes a good guest. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, what makes a good guest for you?
For me, I mean, a good guest is somebody that wants to share, that is passionate about a subject, and also can speak. And I've had some guests who ramble about anything and everything, and because they've never done a show and they're so passionate about talking about this. I had someone who was, I think she was 78. She was a 9/11 survivor, amazing woman, but she tended to go from subject to subject. So I had to bring her back, but do it in a respectful way because it was a sensitive subject. And that's hard. When do you like Gary Vee? I saw Gary Vee, he had Tony Robbins on his show and he was constantly interrupting him, which made me upset because I couldn't do that. But he could do it and he could get away with it. But I wanna facilitate and listen more, and maybe I sometimes need to get better at breaking the the vibe. So I think a good guest is someone that has a message and are able to convey it.
Anything else?
No, I mean they should be truly passionate, because I have people reaching out all the time to me now, probably 2 or 3 persons a week. They want to be on the show, and I want to give a chance to everybody to be on my show. I'm not that picky with how many followers you are, but I am picky though if you're passionate. And it's also something that's passionate for me. If someone reached out to me and they wanted to talk about mold and things like that, and I'm not passionate about that.
I'm sorry, I want to talk about what?
Mold in houses or something like that, because I'm in real estate. So I think they thought that I would be interested in that subject. But I was not interested in that. So I said, thank you for your reply. This is not the right fit. And it was not for me. I don't want to have that conversation, especially not recorded and broadcast it to the world.
So that's it. Thank you for your interest. I'm not interested. It's not a good fit, and that's that. No more.
I try to be nice. Thank you for your inquiry. I really appreciate it. Right now, we're fully booked. Reach out to me in 3 to 6 months, and we'll see what happens. So, and we'll see how persistent they are, because I feel there's a bullshit radar. I call every person who is successful or busy, so to speak, they have a lot on their plate. They have a bullshit radar, just like Dave Asprey had or Tom Bilyeu had. He can't say yes to everybody. So you have to, by reaching out 5, 10, 15 times creatively, now you're taking that step, and you're not a bullshitter anymore who just sent out template emails with the wrong name. You're somebody that really wants to have this conversation. So I think that's what I think when it comes to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. Actually, remember till today, 12 years ago, I sent an email to the founder of Flickr.
Yeah.
And my assistant did it, my assistant at the time. And then he forgot to swap out the first name.
Yeah.
And then she personally emailed me back that, hey, my name is not so-and-so. And I just feel like, oh my God, it's so terrible. Don't do that, guys. This is a lesson of what not to do.
We all make mistakes. And I mean, if you haven't read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, you'll know that everybody's favorite name is their own name. That's why if you can, like, even when I talk to somebody, I like, hey, CK Lin, or your full name, hey, Peter Jumrukovski. And if you can pronounce a difficult name the right way, instantly you get the respect. So I think being prepared is key.
Yeah, for sure. Now I'm looking at the time, so we only have a few minutes left. Let's actually also talk about something that everyone wants to know, monetization aspect of it. So how do you look at podcast? Is it, so I'll share first, and then you can jump in and see how you look at it. So in the beginning, I saw it more of an audience building function, right? Hey, I'm here to share wisdom and knowledge that I have gathered over the years. So I want to use it as a way to build my own platform, right?
Yeah.
And then what I realized, like, hey, that may come. That's gonna take time, right? I can't force a seedling go to an oak tree overnight. That's just not how it works. It's gonna take however long it takes. So my perception of the whole podcasting is actually, it's a calling card for me to talk to really interesting people and deepening my relationship with them over time. That's the way I look at it now. So I'm curious to know for you, in terms of monetization, how do you look at this? Is it purely for the doing it for the sake of love? Do you even look at monetization at all? And if you do, how do you look at it?
Yeah. So I look at it as a long-term play, and I'm trying to learn from great people. And uh, Tom Ferry, which is a great example, he did a video a week for 11 years without asking for anything from his listeners and audience, just subtle messages on how uh, his brand is, whatever he's doing. And now he's one of the biggest coaches in the real estate industry. So I try to look at it from a long-term play, and I didn't do that when I was beginning. If I would, when I planned my podcast 4 years in where I am right now, would probably I would have think that I would have monetized it in a way. Right now, look at it as a long-term play. I'm gonna do this for a very long time. And when the time is right, when my audience is big enough, I'm gonna launch products that can give my listeners even more value and just keep growing that way. But first off, I'm going to do this because I really love it and share as much as I can and believe that the universe somehow will give back.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the way I, again, bring it back to the currency of love again.
Yeah.
If you don't like the word love, look at it as a currency of value.
Yeah.
And the fact that Peter and I were having this conversation now, we're creating value, but we're recording this such that the ripple effect continues.
Yeah.
Right. And even if one person, a podcaster, the future Joe Rogan, let's say, listen to this and they get inspired and then take on some of these tactical things that we talk about. And to me, that's value created, and the ripple effect continues that way.
Yeah, you have to plant so many seeds. I think most people think they can plant 10 seeds and think that you're going to grow like a big farm. It doesn't work like that. I mean, I've planted 220 seeds, and I mean that's not a lot if you look at it from a farmer's perspective, right? Plant thousands of seeds, great seeds, and you will get so much back. I think most people think if I plant 10, 20 seeds, I will get so much back. No, it doesn't work like that because some of the seeds are not going to grow. You have to just do more, give more. And it takes a lot of work. And I think that's why most people don't want to do it, because you have to really be passionate about it.
Yeah. We have the remaining 3 minutes, and it's a hard cutoff in 3 minutes, right?
I have another appointment at 4, so I just need
Okay, great.
I just need 1 or 2 minutes before the other appointment, so we can go to 3:57. That's fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
So, I cut you off so now you book them. You had a conversation. Is there anything you wanted to say about the conversation part to prepare them? And do you do pre-interview conversations at all?
No, I don't want that. I want to talk as little as possible with them. I have guests that are like, hey, I want to talk to you before. I say, okay, I'll call you. And I call them 2 minutes, say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. I don't want to talk more with you now because I want the conversation to be real, raw, deep, and honest. And are you willing to do it? If they say yes, sure. So I don't want to talk to them before the show.
Got it. So in this respect, you're more like Larry King. You're just like, hey, let's do it raw. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing this. And then what do you do in the post-production aspect of it?
I have an editor, so I just send him the audio files and he edits very minimal. Put in an intro. If I said fuck too many times, he might remove 1 or 2. And then if there's something, it has happened, I think 2 or 3 times that the guests have called me and say, hey, I really don't want this to be on the show. Can you remove it? And of course, I'll do that to respect my guests. And that's pretty much it.
Got it. So it's not an automatic. So Tim Ferriss would say, hey, before I send it out to everyone, could I publish everything? Basically, they have final creative control, right? So you don't necessarily do that, but then they will call you if they feel, kind of
after the conversation. If they feel that something is not right, they'll tell me.
Okay, cool. And then do you do anything else in the post-production aspect of it?
No.
Okay. Do you do like a SEO blog post, all of the transcripts? Do you break it up into smaller clips so then there's derivative of this original work that you've done?
No, that's why I need someone to help me with that, because I don't have the time to do all of that, and I want to do it. I've done a little of it, but I want to do much more because I have so much great content now that I can use. And sometimes when people go on YouTube or on iTunes, there's like a 1 hour show. Even, I mean, Tom Billy said that's like 2% of the population. The rest, they just gonna leave. And I'm targeting that 2%, so I'm okay with that. But if why would I want to leave out the other 98% that can also learn something, and then they might need some help in order to pursue a longer format content. So that's something that I'm working on.
Yeah. Um, got it. Do you dabble in any kind of other platforms at all? Twitter, Facebook groups, TikTok, anything like
Yeah.
that?
Instagram, Facebook Live, I've started this year, and that's kind of been one of the biggest things for me because I've had, I think, about a fourth of all my downloads or views are now from Facebook.
Mm,
And it's only on my private Facebook page, basically. And just because I have so great guests, when I tag them, it comes on that great guests Facebook wall, and that's has given me a bigger platform.
mm, mm, mm.
And my focus next year is going to be YouTube. I think that's the probably going to be the best way for me to grow.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, with 1 minute
Yeah.
left, is there anything else that you think I should ask, but I didn't ask?
No, I think for everybody that listening here, uh, I think we have said it. You just have to do it. You have to be passionate about it and just get started. The rest will come. You don't. I didn't know shit about podcasting when I started. I just knew I wanted to talk to people, and that's the only thing you need. And then just decide on how often and stick to that schedule.
Yeah, and you do once a week.
I started bi-weekly because I didn't know how it will work. So I would encourage everybody, don't make it too hard for you. Do it one, I would say maybe bi-weekly or whatever you feel comfortable with. Even once a month is better than nothing. And then ramp up. I realized after 2 or 3 months that I want to do this on a weekly basis. But as both you and me know, do it on a weekly basis. It's hard to get guests. You have to record. You have to know cancellations. There's a lot of moving parts. So it's up to you how much you can dedicate to this.
Yeah. Hey, Peter, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and story and jam with me. Any new podcast listening, I hope they pay attention. Coming from someone with 220 episodes, that's quite an accomplishment. So thank you so much for being here and have a conversation with me.
I want to thank you, CK, for creating this conversation and for everything that you do. Congrats. I'm excited for your journey as well. And for everybody out there listening, just let us know how we can help. We're here. I love podcasting. Feel free to reach out with any questions.
I love success. Go to I Love Success. Check out Peter's podcast. Good stuff.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, man. Hey, thank you so much.